Before we begin with questions, I'd like to ask for your help. I know that the subcommittee staff has asked for information in the past, and I've been disappointed with how long it's taken to provide them with a response. And I know that you both understand how important it is to have a strong collaborative relationship so we can work on responses and maybe improve those times going forward. I'd really appreciate it. Assistant Secretary Jacobson, we've all talked, you spoke, several of us up here have spoken about concerns with Maduro's Venezuela and people that have been massacred in the streets, human rights violations galore. Gentlewoman from Florida has talked about how testimony before the OAS was rebuffed and not allowed. And I'm asking, what can we do? What is the administration planning to do concretely beyond just announcing Maduro's violent tactics? What's our game plan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the question, and I think it's important. Obviously, part of the strategy moving forward to get Venezuela, really to get Venezuelans talking to each other, which is what's necessary, is rhetorical, is to respond to each repressive tactic by the government and to support the notion that Venezuelans have decreasing amounts of space in which to act, and therefore they need an opening, an area where they can pursue their goals and their dreams. The opposition needs much greater space, whether it's in the National Assembly or the media, et cetera. But a great deal of what we're trying to do is working with other countries in the hemisphere, some of which are in agreement with us in support of a more open system in Venezuela, and some of which are clearly not. We've seen that. But there are quite a few countries who are extremely concerned about what's going on in Venezuela, and coordinating with those countries is important. We've said from the beginning that what we think is most important is having an external presence for a real dialogue, so that Venezuelans can talk to each other with some sense of confidence, because the situation is so polarized. Right now you have the UNASUR countries, many of the foreign ministers in Venezuela. We have been encouraging that process, but we also believe that it's very important that the opposition feel confidence in the process moving forward, and that whatever third-party mediator or mediators, if there are multiple, and there's been some obvious discussion in the press about the Vatican, that those people create a space in which everyone can have confidence to pursue their agenda. This seems to be getting underway. We've worked closely with a number of countries around the hemisphere and outside on this possibility, and we hope that that will begin to make a difference.
I know the ranking member and I have both expressed our frustration with the goings-on with OAS, and you and I spoke privately about it as well. I think we have to send a very clear message to them, at least from this body, that not only are we watching, but we're growing tired of their shenanigans and their lack of response to important issues. And there may be a time, and I hope we don't have to do that, but there may be a time when this Congress is going to have to vote with its pocketbook. And I think they have to understand that we understand that dialogue and free flow of ideas is important, but this body is there to protect freedom and democratic views and opportunities for the protection of human rights. And while I understand that there's a lot of the subgroups within that body that do some good things, the leadership at the top is impotent and ineffective. And rather than just wait them out, I think that they have to know that our patience is wearing very, very thin, and I hope that you all will share that message back with them, that it becomes increasingly more difficult for us to justify to our taxpayers that we're funding 40% of that organization when the returns aren't very great. I have another question real quick. It's regarding President Obama's visit to Mexico for the North American Leaders Summit. Ranking Member Sirius and I sent him a letter expressing some of our hopes for the summit. One of them we asked him to look at was establishing a high-level security dialogue, much like the high-level economic dialogue that we have with Mexico. And I understand that some progress has been made. You denoted some of that in your comments. Hope you provide the committee with some details of how the dialogue on the security cooperation with Mexico is going, and what progress you see happening and what more needs to be done.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the question. As you know, I've been involved in the Merida Initiative since its inception, and I continue to believe that this is an incredibly important part of our bilateral relationship. I think you've seen, Mr. Chairman, that in recent weeks there have been some significant strides in cooperation that have resulted in the arrest of Chapo Guzman of the Sinaloa cartel. And I think that in the past year, the cooperation with Mexico has become ever more fluid and more routine, and that's a very good thing. We had a mechanism under the previous Mexican government called the high-level group, which met on security. It included about 5 different cabinet members. We needed to wait till this new government felt comfortable that all the procedures were in the right place. But I think led by Rand Beers at the NSC and others, from the Homeland Security perspective as well as the NSC, the State Department is beginning to talk with our Mexican counterparts about how we can restart the highest level security dialogue, because frankly the other members of the team at the Undersecretary and other levels have really been working pretty productively over the last year, and I think you're beginning to see the fruits of that. But it's definitely not forgotten in the emphasis on the economic.
My time has expired. I recognize the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.